All right, looks like it's 5 after the hour. We've got a pretty good attendance here so far, so we want to go ahead and kick this off. I want to thank everybody for taking some time out of your day and joining us for our ITUG meetup, virtual meetup. Hopefully here soon we'll be getting some guidance and be able to meet in person again, maybe the next one or the one after that. We'll figure it out. But wanted to welcome you. Real quick introductions here. I think most of you know Ryan Moore, Brad Brechbuhl, and myself as co-chairs here. And then we do have a guest speaker today, the all-important Kyle Krieger from CSpring. He works with Brad, and he's going to be presenting on one of the topics today. What we're looking to do is Kyle's going to be speaking first. He's going to talk about tab command and report bursting. And then we're going to jump into some tips and tricks that Ryan and Brad have put together, and then wrap up the hour with planning for the next meeting. While we're going through this, be thinking and considering whether or not you would want to present and participate a little bit more in some of these. Just real quick around ITUG, we are a member-driven organization or group. And really what that means is it's your group, and we're looking to provide content and information that interests you and can be of value to you. And we're also looking for you to participate if you're comfortable doing that. So if you feel like you would like to present at some point, or when we get back to meeting in person, if you would like to host, let's have those conversations. So with that, I am going to throw it over to Mr. Krieger and allow him to introduce himself and present what he has for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Clayton. So hi, everyone. I'm Kyle Krieger, and as Clayton mentioned, I'm an associate consultant at CSpring, and I'm going to be going over report bursting with tab command today. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, and bear with me if you hear some beeping in the background. There's construction going on right outside the condo, so hopefully nothing too loud, no hammers, but we'll see what happens. Okay, you guys should be seeing my PowerPoint slides. Okay, I see some head nodding. Awesome. So thank you today, everyone, for joining us for the ITUG group. As mentioned, I work at CSpring, and a little bit about CSpring. We are a technology consulting firm here in Indianapolis. We serve the public and private sectors, and we are a Tableau services partner and a certified women-owned business enterprise. And our main mission is help deliver data-driven solutions that make business information accessible, reliable, and engaging, and in turn help those clients reach their unique business goals. So that's a little bit about CSpring, but we'll go ahead and get started today with report bursting with tab command. So tab command is something that I haven't seen too much in the marketplace, and there's a decent amount of content out there, but definitely not as much as Tableau Desktop or Tableau Prep. But there's some blogs, a couple webinars out there, so there's some accessibility, but definitely not as much as other aspects of Tableau. But if you leverage it in the right way, it can be something that can have cost savings and time savings to your organization right once you start utilizing it. So it can, like I said, have those cost savings immediately, and that value add will be seen quickly throughout whatever organization or department is using it within your company. So I'll give a little background on it first before I have a demo on how to set everything up, since you may or may not have heard of tab command before. So basically, what is tab command and how can I leverage it? So simply put, it's a way to automate Tableau server or Tableau online administration tasks. So if I reference Tableau server or Tableau online today, just know they're both interchangeable with what I'm saying here. It works for both. But basically, it automates all these processes, and the most value add way you can use this in a business case scenario is if you have to download and share large amounts of dashboard views as PDFs. So you may be thinking, why would we want to share worksheets or dashboard views as PDFs? Well, a couple of business scenarios that I've seen are if there's a company, a large organization that has hundreds of salespeople, and maybe they have weekly reports. Maybe those salespeople don't all have Tableau online viewer licenses, but the manager wants to share their weekly sales update with each salesperson and filter that dashboard for those individual salespersons. So what you can do is report burst with tab command, go through all of those salespeople and send those PDFs out and automate that whole process instead of having to click through each filter and manually download each one. Another way of this is if you have lots of clients and they don't have access to an external Tableau online site, or maybe they don't have Tableau desktop in their environment, but you still want to share these reports with them, you can download and extract via tab command and share those PDFs with them in an automated way. So those are a couple of scenarios how it can be used. But what all can you do with tab command? So the main command I'm going to be going over today is exporting views. That's where the real value add comes, as I just mentioned. But for internal administration tasks, you can do more with adding or deleting users, refresh extracts, publish or deleting workbooks. And then no matter what command you're going to have to do, you're going to have to log in via tab command to your Tableau online or Tableau server. So that is something I'll show as well. But like I said, we'll be focusing on exporting views today. And then what do I need to get started? So there's really 4 main components. So on my Windows computer, I need command prompt, and I'm going to be running that as an administrator today. And if you haven't used command prompt before and you're thinking, oh boy, like that's a scary task, I'm no expert in command prompt. I hadn't used it until a couple months ago. So there's lots of resources online about that you can read up on, and it doesn't have to be some scary task if you are not familiar with it. But then on your computer, you need a file path to Tableau server. So if you have Tableau online, you need the most up-to-date Tableau server. So I'll be using 2021.1. And the reason for that is since Tableau manages Tableau online, they roll out the updates very consistently there. So you'll want the most up-to-date file path on your computer. But if you have Tableau server and if you're managing that on your own, you'll want whatever version of Tableau server you are using. So if you're still on 2020.3, for example, that's the file path that you would want on your computer until you do update. And then you need your Tableau server or online username and password, so just your login credentials, so you need access to it. And then you need to choose a location to save the PDF files that you're going to report burst for. So for the demo today, I will just be saving them in a folder on my desktop. So for the demo, I'm going to be covering a dashboard that one of my colleagues, Morgan, created on American Airlines flight delays. And so as mentioned, we want to identify the filter. So I'll be showcasing that aspect now. So what I'll do is for your first step, you want to go to your Tableau online and basically identify, what workbook am I going to report burst for and what filters am I going to report burst with. So this goes back to the example, if you have a sales dashboard and you want to identify that dashboard and then all of the filters. So let's say that's for your salespeople, you're going to run a report burst for that. So what I'll do is go in here to this demo American Airlines flight exploration workbook, and then I have my flights across country sheet. So if we come in here, we can see this dashboard right here. And correspondingly, I've identified my filter up here for cities. And so obviously, if I click through, to Albuquerque, the view and the data will update for Albuquerque and so on. If I went to Indianapolis, we could see the data corresponding there. So now that we have our workbook and filters identified, one other key aspect to note is up here in the browser. This is going to be key. So it has, the workbook name, Demo AA Flight Exploration, and then the workbook sheet, Flight Across Country. So we'll want that when we go to create our files here in a bit. So that's the first step, identifying your dashboard and the sheet. From there, what we're going to do is all of our filters, we're going to want to put those in a text file. So I already have that created, but I'll open it up so you can see. All I did was simply copy and paste them into a notepad right here. And I have all the different cities within our data that we're going to report burst for. And one thing to note is with tab command, if your filters have 2 words, so like Las Vegas, Los Angeles right there, you want to put a %20 in that space so that tab command doesn't get messed up by that space, and that'll just let it know that this is our full filter right here. So Los Angeles, not Los space Angeles, and that'll work. It won't break basically what we're going to run in tab command. So that's one thing to know. Back to the salesperson example, if you know, first and last name, you'll want that percent 20 to fill that gap there. So this is something that we, only need to create on the front end one time, a part of this process. Obviously, you need to keep updated if you have salespeople leaving your company, joining your company, or you have clients joining your company. You need to update this text file periodically with those new inputs. And then from there, we're going to basically create a batch file that we're going to run a loop on to report burst for all those filters. So this is also something that you will just have to set up one time, and then from there, you'll just have to run it. So I've already set that up, but I'll open this up so you can kind of see what I created. And basically on this part right here, what I'm saying is this asterisk, I'm referencing all of the different cities and airports in my file that I've saved. So you need to reference the file, the text file that you've created. So I have it saved in that report bursting demo folder, and I named it airports.txt. So that's my file where all those names are, and that's just my way to reference those. And I'm going to do a process line to where that'll bring in my tab command export right here. So this is where we bring in tab command. And as mentioned earlier in the Tableau online browser, I have my demo AA flight expiration workbook, my flights across country sheet, and then this question mark represents that I'm switching over to a filter. So I'm going to be filtering my city, and I want that to equal this percent asterisk, which once again is going to run through all of those different cities. So if I was only report bursting for Indianapolis per se, I could just type in Indianapolis. But since we want this to be automated, that's why we have that percent asterisk in there to make sure it runs through the whole loop. And then I want them, my files to download as a PDF. And I've chosen my page layout to be portrait. You can choose landscape or a couple of different options, but I'm going to do portrait. And then you have to choose a file location to save it. So I'm going to be saving it in that same folder on my desktop. And right here in the naming mechanism, I'm also using that percent asterisk so that it will name each PDF for whatever city I'm report bursting for. So that way I don't have to manually go in and rename each PDF to Indianapolis _ delays, Atlanta _ delays. It'll already be named after I run it. So as I mentioned, this is something that you only have to set up once on the front end. You'll just have to run it, on a weekly basis if that's the timeline that you do your report bursting. So from there, what we're going to do is the actual report bursting. So this is what you would do on that cadence of your weekly report, monthly, quarterly, for maybe your sales data or external reports to clients. So what I'll do is search for command prompt on my computer, and I'm going to run as administrator. And you won't be able to see this part on my screen, but it just asks if I want to allow this to make changes. And I hit yes. Then I'll drag this over so you all can see it, make it a little bigger, but I don't have the capability to zoom in on this command prompt. But all I'm going to do is basically here is copy and paste the file path to Tableau server command line utility on my computer, as I mentioned earlier. So I'll bring that over, and to make this really easy for people to use, you can have this documentation copied and pasted in shared files for your organization. And like I just did, you'll just have to copy and paste it, so you don't have to worry about typing in exactly all of these new details. So I have this in here for my program files. You can see Tableau Server 2021.1 and command line utility. So I'm going to hit enter, and now I'm locked into that file path. And then I'm going to bring over my tab command login, and that's how I will connect to Tableau Online. So tab command login, I have my site, so online.tableau.com. If you're doing this for your Tableau server, that would just be your URL for that. So your organization name, Tableau server, whatever that might be. And then I have my site name in here. So CSpring, our company. And then you'll need your login credentials. So your username or email, and then your password. So I'll drag that off screen share so I can put in my credentials and log in real quick. So bear with me for 1 second while I do that. And it'll be simple, really easy process. I just have to type in my email and my password. And then in the same format, I'm just going to hit enter. And it's going to go through the process of getting me signed in. So it's creating a new session, connecting the server, signing in, succeeded. Okay, cool. Let me scroll down a little bit so my password is not showing anymore. And then I'll drag that over so you guys can see it. So as you can see here, it created a new session to our server. It's got my username, our site name connected to the server, and it succeeded. So I'm logged into Tableau Online in our environment and have a really easy process there. All I had to do was plug in my credentials and I'm good to go. One thing to note is if you have Tableau server, it's the same process. So you don't have to worry about any changes other than you just have, like I said, instead of online.tableau, you'll just have your company Tableau URL. So from there, what we want to do is actually run the batch file. So we're logged in now, we can run that file. So I have that here. As mentioned earlier, this airport loop that I showcased, all I'm going to do is click on it, right click and hit this run as administrator. And so from there, it asks me again if I want to allow it to run. I'm going to hit yes, and then it automatically starts running. So I'll put that on full screen here. And as you can see, it's doing that process line call. So there's Albuquerque. It's requesting the data for Albuquerque. And then I can see that one worked. It saved it into my folder and renamed it Albuquerque_delays. So that goes to show that, I don't have to worry about renaming it. It's still running through all of them. Now we're on to Atlanta. That ran. Now we're on to Boston. So for example, if we didn't have this capability with report bursting and tab command, and I wanted to do this manually, I could go in here to Tableau Online. I could go to download PDF. I have to click another download, and then that's going to take a second. And then we get this right here for all of the filters. It'll open in a second. There we go. And it doesn't name it. Rename it, just has flights across country version 8 since I did a couple tests this morning. So now I want to click through to Albuquerque. I want to download that. And I got to hit PDF again, download. And so as you can see, we didn't have the capabilities of report bursting with tab command and we needed to do this, this is really time intensive, especially if you have hundreds of salespeople, hundreds of clients. And as mentioned, it'll work and filter, but we have to rename all of the PDFs to the city. We then have to choose where to bring them out of our download folder and what file to save them in. So if you have to do this once a week and it takes you an hour, then that's 4 hours a month. And you can do the math and that just starts adding up really quickly. And all of your time is more valuable than that. So with report bursting, that whole time I've been doing this, it's still been running in the background. And in the time that I did those 2 PDFs, we have a good amount already run through here. We're down to Indianapolis. And so as I mentioned, it renames it. So if I wanted to open a couple, let's say Albuquerque, let's do Denver and Indianapolis, I'll open those. And let's see here, 1 second, open. And basically, we're gonna, it's not opening. There we go, okay. I'll open one at a time. But we don't have to worry about renaming him, and it's still running in the background during all that. So as you can see, it's working, it's filtering for Boston. We have Atlanta here. So I could be sending emails out right now on a Monday morning while that report bursting is going on in the background. I could be in a client call right now or whatever, and you don't have to worry about spending your time worrying about report bursting manually. One thing to note is for those cities that have that percent 20 in there, it will put that in the name of the PDF. So if you do have some of those, just be aware of that. It's still to all be saved the same way. So it's nothing too intensive, but it worked for him. If I didn't have that percent 20 in there, we wouldn't have Los Angeles. It would have skipped over it. But since I do have that in there and bring that up, it worked. We have, that's Atlanta. here we go. I should have closed out of Edge. I don't know why they're popping up in there. Basically, oh, that's still Atlanta. Well, it was working earlier on that aspect, but anyways, usually you just have to make sure, I think a percent got deleted out, but it works that way, and you don't have to worry about filtering through and downloading all of these manually. So for example, we have Nashville right here and the flights and everything. So it's all good to go. And if this was our salespeople, we would be able to send those out to each of them. Or if we had it in a shared file location, all we would have to do is they would just go look for their named file or click through them all if we had that saved on Teams or whatever, for example. So really easy process. And it's still running. It only takes about 3 to 4 minutes, and it's not too cumbersome or anything like that. So that's what I have for report bursting. I know we have some tips and tricks coming up in here in a second, so I figured I would do one tips and trick for that aspect to get us kick-started. So if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to have to type in all of those different clients or all those different salespeople's names into Notepad, one thing you can do here is I have our subcategories in Sample Superstore. You can just control-click on all of those and then control-copy. And then I'm just going to put control-paste into Notepad. And so you don't have to worry about typing through all the different filters. And it's an easy mechanism to do real quick. So I'm sure there's even more ways you can apply that to certain aspects if you need to. But that's what I have today for report bursting. As I mentioned, I think it can be a great tool. Not a lot of people leverage it. So if you have the right opportunity to use it in your organization, I think it can create value add right away in those time and cost savings. And really, it can make it a lot easier for those external reports if you have clients that you want to share these awesome dashboard views that you're creating, but they don't have Tableau in their environment and can't access an external site. All you have to do is report burst, and then you'll have those files saved and downloaded, and you'll be able to send them off to whoever needs to see them. So I'll stop sharing my screen and toss it back to you, Brad.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Kyle. That was awesome. Make sure to check the chat if you can, Kyle. We had a couple of questions about someone might using a different variable for the file path. So check that out when you have a chance.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, then I will we'll transition into the tips and tricks. I will be doing kind of the first half, and then I'll send it over to Ryan to kind of wrap us up. So let me share my screen here. And let me know when you guys can see this. Give me a thumbs up. All right, cool. All right, so the first tip and trick is we can efficiently make workbooks. By nature, Tableau sorts your dimensions and measures alphabetically. So a good use case for this would be, to have all your parameters together, to have all maybe your sets together, headers, and so forth. If you put like a prefix before all those fields, you'll be able to kind of see these all together. Another interesting use case would be for specific dashboards, right? For like dashboard 1, you could put a D1 before that. Another kind of organization tip and trick that I will mention is Tableau recently switched over to this kind of table structure where all of your tables in your database are your measures and dimensions are organized this way. However, if you want to change this, you can drop down to this caret and go to the group by folder. And this is your traditional view of where you have all of your dimensions and all of your measures. Now, let me flip back over to group by data source table. And when I go to create a folder, you'll notice that I can't do it. So I right click, folders is blanked out. So in order to create folders, you have to switch this to group by folder, and then I can now create the folder here. So anyway, just a couple tips for efficiently making your workbooks. The next one is on that similar path. I have personally done this since it's been a newer feature, but I will go through all of my dashboard visualizations and format each of those. However, I want to point out the easy way is you go up to format up here and format the entire workbook. And it's going to pop open a screen over here, and you can basically format all of your titles, all of your worksheets, all of your tooltips and so forth using features here. So important thing to kind of remember here with the tip and trick for workbook formatting. Next, we will work on, we'll look at axis formatting. So this is a little trick that you can, you know, as you guys probably know, you can format this axes. So if I go to format here and make sure you select axes instead of pane, you can go to numbers, and you kind of use this kind of drop down is a starting place for this tip and trick, right? So if you want this decimals to be 0, watch when I change this, how the axes in the background will go down to 0 decimal places. But maybe I also want to add the thousands. And what this is doing in the background of Tableau is it's writing a code to Tableau in the background to show how to display the axes. You'll notice here that I have this 0K down here. I don't particularly love that. So what you can do is you can go in here and go to this custom. So you notice that all of the stuff that I selected here is actually going to be written in this custom formatting thing. And this is what Tableau is doing in the background. I'm not going to get into the details about which each of these do, but in order to remove that 0K, you add a semicolon and a space and click off, and you'll notice that that 0K is now gone. So again, it's not going to change everyone's life, but it's a nice little thing if you don't want to display that 0K. Now, some of you might be asking, well, what if I just uncheck 0 on this axis? Well, this doesn't really work, and I can show you why. If I don't say include 0, we still have this label here. So anyway, that is the trick to kind of format your axes and remove that kind of 0 from there. This is kind of a cool one. You can choose your map color. So for those of you that might be making more of like an art piece dashboard, what you can do here is if you go to map and you go to map layers, you can uncheck base and land cover and then add coastline. You'll notice that we get, somewhat of a resemblance of a pretty good map here. But then we can format this map. So if I go in here and I say, well, I don't really want a white map, we can format this. I can go to this pane and I can select any of these colors, right? So maybe I want, maybe a dark map. So I'll select one of these, and you can see that we can change this to a dark map as well. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to switch this over to, maybe we'll do a pink map. And then if I go back into those map layers, I can also change the style background. It looks like it's kind of gray, like all these outlines of all these countries and the coastline. But I can also change that to black if I wanted more of a kind of a pop for the coastline there. So this would be useful if you had like a dashboard that wasn't maybe white in the background, and you kind of wanted this map to kind of blend in with your other visualizations on the dashboard. So anyway, kind of a cool little trick to customize your map colors there. One quick one here, most of you may know, but you can quickly double click these to make a 4-quadrant dashboard. So I just double click these, and now we have our nice 4-quadrant dashboard here. Now we'll go into some color legends. So the issue with this is you'll notice that my sales scale goes from 0 to maybe millions. My profit has negative and positive values. And then we also have a profit ratio over here that really isn't a percent. So you'll notice when I use one measure or one color legend for these measure values, it's not really beneficial. So what we can do is I can right click here and use separate color legends. You say, okay, great, but we still have this, and here's a sneak peek of what's actually going to happen. But if you right click in here, say that I just want to show the profit ratio as colored, but I want to include sales and profit in the view like I have here. If you go to these edit colors here on the legends, you want to change this to a 2-stepped color. And then you want to basically configure each of these ends of the spectrum to white. So if I move this all the way to white, that's going to be white over here. And I can also do the same thing over here and make that white as well. So when I click OK, now we can essentially trick Tableau into removing that color legend. And then you have a nice, a nice color color legend just for profit ratio, just to show that. But you also want to include sales and profit. Here is kind of data densification that we'll work with, but a lot of times people may want to show blanks or zeros instead of blanks here. So there's a couple different techniques to do this. I'm just going to show a few here, but in order to show to populate the rest of these with ABC, I can pull index over to detail, and boom, now we have kind of our full fledged kind of table that's populated throughout. The next trick is we can also do this for a numeric axis. So if I go into here, so let me flip back here. And if I go to subcategory category, if I go to show, maybe there's not even an option. There's not an option to do this, but there is an option to do this if you click the axes to show missing values here. So essentially when I do that, it does the same thing, and it also populates some additional kind of buckets in this case for profit bins here. So let me show that one more time. See, we go from -6,600 to -4,000. But when I go ahead and click show missing values, now it kind of populates all of the different bins for this as well. So a couple different techniques depending on if you're looking at dimensions or measures there. One more thing, a couple more things, tips and tricks that I have here is we have our missing values here. And this is kind of goes along with data densification, that maybe I want to show percentages here instead of blanks, right? I want to show 0% instead of these blanks because a user of this dashboard may think that their data is missing, or they may not trust it as well. So we want to show 0 for each of these. So a little trick here is we're going to go back to this index feet function, and we're going to put this here. You'll notice in the background is doing something. So if I scroll over one of the cells, it says index 1, index 2, index 3. If I move this to label, you'll see those indexes. Don't worry necessarily, that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 through 12. Just notice that it's populating the cell behind it with this. Now I'm going to take I'm going to make a calculation in order to trick Tableau into showing those 0%. And that calculation, and I'll show you this here. Let me zoom in here. And this basically says if the profit ratio is not null, then then just display the profit ratio, right? So that would display 19%, 11%, 11% here. Else, if it is null, then take the index minus the index. So what this is going to do is either display the 11%, or for a cell like this, it's going to take 7 minus 7, which is 0. So when I pull this on, so we can remove index, we can remove profit ratio, and I can pull this calc trick onto label, and now we have our zeros. So the last thing that you need to do here is just format this into percentages. So if I go to percentage, I don't know why that is looking funky here. Oh, because I'm on scientific, not percentage. There we go. So now we have 0% that are displayed kind of throughout our table. And again, in order to kind of show that, hey, there is data, we know there's data here, but in this case, the profit ratio is 0. One more similar trick to that, another way to do this without kind of going through and creating those additional calculations, is we can do something here where if I click on month, and I show, and I select show missing values, we would expect maybe something to happen. But I click that and it has the same thing that kind of worked when I moved index onto this. But we still don't see any of these kind of missing values. But what we can do is we can then go right click on this profit ratio and click format. And notice here, the special values kind of area down here at the bottom. If I go in here and click 0% and click off, now we have that same 0% that we can display in our table. I can also display really anything else I want to, right? So I could also type in ITUG, and you'll notice that now we have ITUG populating, right? So this can, maybe I want to do hello world as well, and that would populate as well. So anyway, a couple tricks for data densification there. One of the coolest recent tricks that I found out is tables in Excel. So let me open up a couple different Excel files and show you this. So if you are anything like me, I have seen Excel files come out something like this, where it comes out of a system and you have, you know, maybe a table here and a table here. And they, you know, the system thinks that this is formatted really well, but it's actually not formatted very well at all, because if you put this into Tableau, if I add data source, let's see. You see that you have all of this kind of gobbledygook here. It's just not very well. But what you can do is inside of your Excel file, you can tell Excel, you're basically telling Excel that you want to format this as a table. So you can select any one of these. I'll just select this for the heck of it. You're just telling Excel that this is a table. You do the same thing here, right? Select any one of these, tell Excel that this is a table. And then when I go back into Tableau, I can actually connect to a different Excel file that I already have formatted. And let me remove this. And you'll notice when I go to this, Tableau recognizes now that we have two different tables. So when I move this over here, it's only going to pull in that one table. And then I can basically, you know, I could do joins or noodles or whatever that you want using both of those tables on the same, you know, the same file without having to do crazy VLOOKUPs or deleting rows or columns or whatever. So that was one of the coolest tricks that I found recently that I wanted to mention to you guys there. And you'll notice the difference between here, kind of the tables. Here's the non-formatting. We don't get that option here. Here's the formatted. You could also use the data interpreter. That might also be able to help sometimes. When I click the data interpreter, it's going to recognize that these are both tables here, and you could leverage that as well, right? So I could pull these over here. This is a table. I could pull this over as well. You can also, this also works with named ranges in Excel as well. So keep that in mind as a couple little tricks. The final two that I have are quick ones, and they are in Tableau server. So let me pull up my Tableau server here. You can reorder your favorites. It says it up here in the Tableau server, but you can reorder these, right? So I can move this over here if I wanted to. You cannot do that if I go into Explore and I say I want to move this one over here. You can't do that. So just a couple things there. One thing that they recently added is now you can search Tableau dashboards with a Control F. So say, for example, if I wanted to search for education on this Tableau dashboard, I can type in education up here, and you'll notice that that the browser is actually reading the Tableau dashboard and the text that I have in the Tableau dashboard. So you'll notice that this comes up when I type this. If I change this to, you know, loans, right, loans pops up all the way in the dashboard. So that nice kind of Control F feature that a lot of us are used to in web pages and PDFs, what have you, you can now do in the browser and inside a Tableau server. So that is all the tips and tricks that I have for you guys today. Hopefully I didn't go too fast, but I wanted to leave some time for Ryan to finish up. He's got some good ones. So appreciate it. Hopefully these were useful for you.
Incredible job, Brad. It's going to be tough to follow. All right, let me share my screen and I'll get started as well. So my tips, I've tried to go off the beaten path with what I'm showing, some things that are coming out of things that I've been very frustrated with something that I wanted to know when I was first starting Tableau, or hijinks that I've gone through and I've realized that these are probably not on a top 15, top 5 tips and tricks within, if you were to Google on Google for Tableau tricks. So the first one I'm going to show is within Tableau, if you have a dashboard that's all built out, you've got your sheets on here, and imagine it's a lot more complex, and you wanted to switch one of these sheets to a different data source. So normally you would go up to data and you would go maybe possibly into the sheet itself. You would right click and do replace data source. But within that dashboard, you know that when you do that, it's applied when you replace the data source, it's applied workbook wise. So, and you only want to change it on one of these sheets. What you might be doing when you have an extensive dashboard or extensive sheet that you don't want to recreate, because you have the tooltips exactly how you want it, you have the formatting exactly how you want it. What I suggest is you copy the sheet itself, go up to File, New, and I've already got the dashboard open, or a brand new one right here, paste it in. So now I've got it exactly as it was. And what I need to do in here, and say, imagine that you are changing this data source, and I'm going to just change it to adjusted state. Technically, I'm not changing the data source, but you'll see that it's a different name here. And imagine you are. Now I'm going to copy it in here. I'm going to paste it back in. Now it's got a different name. You notice the data source came back with it. And then instead of having to recreate this sheet entirely, all I'm having to do is, let me get it back into tiled. I put it right next to that one. Now this one has a different data source while these still have the original. So that saves you a lot of time if you have it formatted specifically how you want it. The next one is Tableau has a little bit of a like discrete memory that's going around with the colors. So imagine, let me get to this dashboard or this sheet. So I'm looking at force colors here. I'm looking at these variety of numbers from roughly 0 to 100 here, but I know that I want to color them yellow and green based on some type of logic. But I know if it goes above 150, I want it to be red. And I know in the future it will be red, say for like 416, 20, 21. I know the next value is going to be above and it needs to be red. What you can do is you can come in into your logic in here. So this is my original logic, but what I'm doing is I'm changing the logic in here to force some of these colors to be red right now. And it's popping up as red because these are above what I just changed the logic to. And now I'm editing red to be red. So when they come in as the future in 416, they're going to be red. Then I go back to my logic, go back to the original that I wanted it to be at. And also, if you didn't know, comments are a thing within here. The double slash is actually commenting, and there's block comments coming to Tableau as well, which I'm going to be happy about when they add that, or at least when my version gets updated to it. So now it's gone back to green and yellow. Just to show you that it's going to remember this, I'm going to go into the Excel sheet. So I'm going to copy this. All right, it's copied, saved, opening it back up. I'm going to hit refresh right here, then come back. Hey, it remembered that I wanted above 151 or 150 to be read. So it allows you to anticipate future values. And when you have discrete logic for the coloring, you're able to mess around with the logic to make it work to be able to have Tableau remember colors. The next one is something that's come out of CAR Global. We use a lot of custom SQL. I know that's sometimes not the norm, but when it is something that you're running into and you're noticing when you try to right click and edit data source, sometimes you'll see something that's popping up and it's going to say loading metadata, and it takes forever for, say, a particular Oracle or database that you're connecting to. One thing that I did notice recently was that if you do have a connection that's actually really quick to edit, you can right click on it, edit data source. And then once you're in here, I noticed one time when I switched within this screen, it skipped the portion that took a long time. So it was something that I'm going to continue trying to do if I run into a long loading of metadata or something that I'm having trouble with, which I'm trying to just get to the SQL to be able to edit it. Go to one that's more quickly loading. And once I'm into this screen, I'm going to change from this screen into editing the SQL. Another fact that I found perusing the form was sometimes you're wanting to cancel like this dreaded screen that just spins and spins on something and you're just wanting to hit cancel, then it's just taking forever to cancel. One thing that I did notice and find within the Tableau forms was that you can hit Alt F4 and it'll get rid of this, though I have noticed that it does kill the connection to the database. But if you're just trying to get to the point where you're editing the SQL, like the example that I was talking about before, Alt F4 will sometimes get you by this, and it gives you a little bit more options if you're continuously spinning on canceled. This one actually was a very recent grading issue that I had. So coming to this, I've got a Vision tooltip on this one, and hopefully some of you are familiar with that, and hopefully within Tableau, normally people, when they're trying to tidy up a workbook, they might go to each one of the dashboards and hit hide all sheets. But the thing is this Vision tooltip, actually, you can have two different layers of hiding sheets. So I just hid all the sheets that are associated with this dashboard, right? But I have a Vision tooltip that's on this copying sheets too. And what I can do is there's a second layer here that I've got hidden sheet right here. And that's only in this workbook or only in this sheet, and it's only on this tooltip. But you can actually hide sheets, and it's a second layer of hiding. And the circumstance that I found myself was that I was trying to edit this Vision tooltip and I couldn't find the sheet. I was unhiding all the sheets that were from the dashboards and I thought that was it, and it should show me the Vision tooltip. And this was a very extensive dashboard and I just could not find it. And then I eventually realized that you can unhide sheets that are also within sheets. So keep that in mind if you're looking for something like that. This is just a classic. So when you're doing a filter, this is the default, but if you and that's with me holding down left click and dragging it up to filter. The other option that I sometimes don't do, but I know is a better thing because you can do it more quickly and gives you a little bit more variety on how you want to filter, but you right click on it and then drag into filters. It gives you the ability to select a different type of filter or how you want to filter in particular of the format. The next one is something that if you're doing something more creative, where you have a background image, say you're floating a bunch of images on here, a lot of different sheets on here. What I found wasn't a tip for this, where you take a floating empty container and say, I want it to look a little bit more grayed out and it's going to make my text pop a little bit better, or you're just stylizing it in a certain way. So I have it floating. I've got the background for this container. I'm going to put it as white. And then I'm just going to change the opacity to let a little bit more of the image through, changing it to 70. Now it's made my background a little bit more white. So if that helps or does not help, however you want to stylize this dashboard, that is how an option for you. And you can do the same thing, only instead of white, I've got black in here, and you can change the opacity to your desire. Another thing that I wanted to throw out was within this same recommendation, you can you can grab colors from images to be able to use within Tableau itself. So I'm using a car global, and you're able to click in here and it's going to give you the different colors in here. I also find myself doing this, where if I grab an image and then I'm just within the dashboard itself, I'm clicking on color. You're able to use your snipping tool that comes up with Windows. And I'm sure there's an equivalent within Mac that you could just grab colors this way with a screenshot. What the font is an interestingly named website that if you upload an image, it's going to try to match you up with what font that image is. So I've got a demo one up here. I actually grabbed one up there. And then it's going to try to find me an equivalent that's going to allow you to copy some of the more well-known, or trying to copy a brand, or if you don't have the font itself, you upload an image, it gives you an idea of what other ones that are similar to it that you might be able to buy or stylize your workbook as well. Read-only dashboard, this is just kind of a classic as well. Say, for example, you have a sheet that you don't want users to be able to click these different things. I know there is an option to be able to take these different sorts away from a user, which is great, but if you want to be able to customize it in other ways, just bear in mind you do have the option of floating containers in here to not allow users to interact with whatever's below the floating container. Or if I don't want someone to be able to highlight over certain sections, et cetera, that this gives you some flexibility of control over what users can or can't do if you have a floating container over it. Resizing the dashboard, this is a tip that I'm not going to actually go through, but I wanted everyone to be aware of it because I thought it was super interesting. It's beyond the scope of the 3 minutes that I have left, of course, as well. But what the forum post was imagine you have an extensive dashboard that's very tall. You have a lot of things that are going on in it, but you realize at the very end that you need a little bit more height. And if you've been in this scenario, you probably realize that you don't have much to work with at that point because you're going to put in your extra added height. And if you have a bunch of floating things, it's going to throw off a lot of your formatting. What I found on this post and what I wanted to show everyone here was this man, Paul Crawford, he posted something here that he's got a Visual Basic script that he's imagining you've got a 100 by 100 dashboard and you want to add another 100 height to it. He's noticing that it stretches, like I was trying to explain there, where it's going to throw off all your formatting. But the Visual Basic and what he walks this through on this post is that you run this script and it edits the XML of the TWB file, and it adds this extra space on the bottom without distorting what you have already created. So I can share this link if you so desire to go through it. It's a little bit more complex than everything else we've shown today, but I just wanted to show that this is an option if it saves you a little bit more time, if you have something that's extensively built out that you can't do all this editing, or if you need to do this, it gives you an option. I thought it was extremely interesting and I wanted to pass it on as an idea. And the last one's a little bit out of the box as well. So if you're trying to come up with an idea of what a dashboard would look like with someone you're working with internally or externally, you're able to grab this tool called ExceliDraw. You're able to do this, and it's something that maybe you might be doing in PowerPoint, but this is extremely suave and simplistic of how you could drop this to a person and allow them to figure out what they want the dashboard to look like, or it just allows you to demo what you might be outlining to someone, and you can see how quickly and reactive this is. So that was all my tips, and we're actually at the 2 o'clock point. And I'll be dropping it back to Clayton.
Thanks, Ryan and Brad and Kyle. I trust everybody found everything informative and beneficial and worth your time. We are right up on the hour, so I don't want to take a ton of time. I know Kyle had offered to share something if you want to stay on for a minute. I know there was a question around having 2 names. Kyle, if you want to hit that real quick.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show real quick on the issue when, it wouldn't show both names. So what I realized was when I went to open some of the PDFs before we got down to Las Vegas, I was still clicked in my airport loop. So it started rerunning that batch and got out of whack. So that's one thing you want to be cautious of not opening that way. But basically, you can see here, I have Las Vegas now. I reran the batch during Brad and Ryan's part, and it worked properly. And we have Las Vegas filtered here. So with 2 names, San Francisco and New York, for example. So just a quick little tip there on making sure, like I did, you don't have the loop still open when you go to run it and open those PDFs.
Very good. Thanks, Kyle.
Yep.
Appreciate that. As usual, we're looking for additional people that would be interested in presenting. And I would say I wouldn't leave it just to a specific topic. If you have a list of tips and tricks that you've picked up that you'd be interested in sharing, let's have a conversation about that. We'll be getting this presentation out to everybody shortly. Be looking at our LinkedIn page, as well as making sure that you're subscribed to the Splash, that page. Any last minute questions before we go? Because I know we've gone over a little bit. Anybody see any in there? All right. With that, unless Brad or Ryan have anything you'd like to add, again, I'd like to thank everybody for the time. Kyle, thank you for taking